And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, and his wife, son of Abram, and all the souls of his household, and went with them from Ur Casdim to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there. And it was exceedingly good land for pasture, and of sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. And the people of the land of Haran saw that Abram was good and upright with God and man, and that the Lord his God was with him. Some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abram, and he taught them the instructions of the Lord and his ways, and these men remained with Abram in his house, and they adhered to him. And Abram remained in the land 3 years, and at the expiration of 3 years the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am the Lord who brought thee forth from Ur Casdim, and delivered thee from the hands of thine enemies. Now therefore, if thou wilt hearken to my voice, and keep my commandments, my statutes, my laws, then I will cause thine enemies to fall before thee, and I will multiply thy seed like the stars of heavens, and I will send my blessings upon all the works of thy hands. Thou shalt lack nothing. Arise now, take thy wife and all belongings to thee, and go to the land of Canaan. Remain there. I will be there unto thee for a God, and I will bless thee. And Abram rose and took his wife and all the belongings to him, and went to the land of Canaan, as the Lord had told him. And Abram was 50 years old when he went from Haran. Now Abram came to the land of Canaan, and dwelt in the midst of the city, and he there pitched his tent amongst the children of Canaan, and inhabitants of the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram when he came to the land of Canaan, and said to him, This is the land which I gave unto thee, and to thy seed after thee forever. And I will make thy seed like the stars of heaven. I will give unto thee thy seed for an inheritance, all the land which thou seest. And Abram built an altar in the place where God had spoken to him. And Abram there called upon the name of the Lord. And at the end of 3 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, in that year Noah died, which was the 58th year of the life of Abram. And all the days that Noah lived, there were 950 years, and he died. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he and his wife, and all belonging to him, and all those that accompanied him, together with those that had joined him for the people of the land, but Nahor, Abram's brother, and Terah, his father, and Lot, the son of Haran, and all belonging to them dwelt in Haran. In the 5th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and all the cities of the plain revolted from the power of Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. For all the kings of the cities of the plains had served Chedorlaomer for 12 years, and had given him tax yearly. But in those days, in the 30th or 13th year, they rebelled against him. And in the 10th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, there was war between Nimrod, king of Shinar, and Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. And Nimrod came to fight with Chedorlaomer and to subdue him. For Chedorlaomer was at that time one of the princes of the hosts of Nimrod. And when all the people at the tower were dispersed, those that remained were also scattered upon the face of earth. Chedorlaomer went to the land of Elam and reigned over it, and rebelled against his lord. And in those days, when Nimrod saw that the cities of the plain had rebelled, he came with pride and anger and war with Chedorlaomer. And Nimrod assembled all his princes and subjects, about 700,000 men. And he went against Chedorlaomer, and Chedorlaomer went out to meet him with 5,000 men. And they prepared for battle in the valley of Babel, which is between Elam and Shinar. And all those kings fought there. And Nimrod and his people were smitten before the people of Chedorlaomer. And there fell from Nimrod's men about 600,000. And Mardon, the king's son, he fell amongst them. Nimrod fled, he returned in shame. Nimrod fled and returned in shame and disgrace to his land, and he was under subjection to Chedorlaomer for a long time. And Chedorlaomer returned to his land, sent princes of hosts to the kings that dwelt around him, to Arioch, king of Elasar, and to Tidal, king of Goyim, and made a covenant with them. And they were all obedient to his commands. And it was in the 15th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 17th year of the life of Abram. And the Lord appeared to Abram in that year, and he said to him, I am the Lord who brought thee out from Ur Casdim, to give thee this land for an inheritance. Now, therefore, walk before me, and be perfect. Keep my commands. For to thee and to thy seed I will give this land for an inheritance, from the river Mithram unto the great river Euphrates. Oh, thou shalt come to thy fathers in peace and in good age. And the fourth generation shall return here in this land, and shall inherit it forever. Oh, Abram built an altar, and he called upon the name of the Lord who appeared to him. He brought up sacrifices upon the altar to the Lord. And at the time Abram returned and went to Haran to see his father and mother and his father's household. And Abram and his wife and all belongings to him returned to Haran. And Abram dwelt in Haran 5 years. And many of the people of Haran, about 72 men, followed Abram, and Abram taught them in the instructions of the Lord and his ways, and he taught them to know the Lord. Well, in those days the Lord appeared to Abram in Haran. He said to him, Behold, I speak unto thee these 20 years back, saying, Go forth from thy land, from thy birthplace, and from thy father's house, to the land of which I have shown thee, to give it to thee and to thy children, for there in that land will I bless thee. Oh, make thee great a nation, make thy name great. In thee shall the families of the earth be blessed. Now, therefore, arise, go forth from this place, thou, thy wife, all thy belongings to thee. Also, every one born in thy house, and all the souls thou hast made in Haran, bring them out with thee from here, and rise to return to the land of Canaan. And Abram rose, took his wife Sarai, and all the belongings to him, and all that were born to him in his house, and all the souls which they had made in Haran, and they came out to go to the land of Canaan. Abram went and returned to the land of Canaan, according to the word of the Lord. And Lot, the son of his brother Haran, we went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he went forth from Haran to return to the land of Canaan. He came to the land of Canaan according to the word of the Lord to Abram. And he pitched his tent, dwelt in the plain of Mamre, and with him was Lot, his brother's son, and all that belonged to him. And the Lord again appeared to Abram and said, To thy seed I will give this land. And he there built an altar to the Lord, who had appeared to him, which was still to this day in the plains of Mamre. 14. In those days there was in the land of Shinar a wise man, who he had understanding and all wisdom, and of a beautiful appearance, but he was poor. He was indigent. His name was Rikayon, and he was hard to support himself. Oh, he resolved to go to Egypt, to Ahasuerus, the son of Anam, king of Egypt, to show the king his wisdom. Perhaps that he might find grace in his sight, to raise him up, give him maintenance. And Rikayon did so. Now, when Rikayon came to Egypt, he asked the inhabitants of Egypt concerning the king, and the inhabitants of Egypt told him the customs of the king of Egypt. For it was then the custom of the king of Egypt that he went from his royal palace, and he was seen abroad only 1 day in the year. And after that, the king would return to his palace and remain there. And on the day when the king went forth, he passed judgment in the land. And everyone having a suit came before the king that day to obtain his request. Well, Rikayon heard of this custom in Egypt, and that he could not come into the presence of the king. He grieved greatly. Oh, he was very sorrowful. And in the evening, Rikayon went out and found a house in ruins, formerly a bakehouse in Egypt. He abode there all night in bitterness of soul and pinched with hunger. Oh, sleep was removed from his eyes. And Rikayon considered within himself that what he should do in the town until the king made his appearance, and now he might maintain himself there. He rose in the morning, walked about, met in his ways those who sold vegetables and various sorts of seed, which they supplied the inhabitants. Now, Rikayon wished to do the same in order to get maintenance in the city. He was unacquainted with the customs of the people. He was like a blind among them. He went and obtained vegetables to sell them for his support, and the rabble assembled about him and ridiculed him. They took his vegetables from him, left him with nothing. And he rose up from them in bitterness of his soul. He went sighing in the bakehouse in which he had remained all night before. He slept there a second night. On that night again he reasoned with himself, how could he save himself from this starvation? He devised a scheme how to act. He rose up in the morning and acted ingenuously. He went and hired 30 strong men of the rabble, carrying their war instruments in their hands. He led them to the top of the Egyptian sepulchre, and he placed them there. He commanded them, saying, "Thus saith the king, strengthen yourselves and be valiant men. Let no man be buried here until 200 pieces of silver be given, and then he may be buried." And those men did according to the order of Rikayon to the people of Egypt the whole of that year. And in the 8th month of that time, Rikayon and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold, and Rikayon took them a great quantity of horses and other animals. He hired more men, gave them more horses, and they remained with him. And when the year came around, at the time of the king went forth into the town, all the inhabitants of Egypt assembled together to speak to him concerning the work of Rikayon and his men. Now, the king went forth on the appointed day, and all the Egyptians that came before him, they cried unto him, saying, "May the king live forever! What is this thing thou doest in the town, to the city, to thy servants, not to suffer a dead body to be buried until so much silver and gold be given? Was there ever the like unto this done in the whole earth, from the days of former kings, yea, even from the days of Adam, unto this day, that the dead should not be buried only for a set price? We know it to be the custom of kings to take a yearly tax from the living, but thou dost not only do this, but from the dead also they exacteth a tax day by day. Oh, now, O king, we can no more bear this. The whole city is ruined on this account. Dost thou know of it?" Now the king heard all they had spoken from. Oh, he was very wroth, and his anger burned within him at this affair. He had known nothing of it. And the king said, "Who and where is he that dares do this wicked thing in my land without my command? Oh, surely you will tell me." They told him all the works of Rikayon and his men, and the king's anger was aroused. Oh, he ordered Rikayon and his men to be brought before him. And Rikayon took about 1,000 children, sons, and daughters, and clothed them in silk and embroidery. He set them upon horses, and he sent them to the kings by means of his men. Now, he also took a great quantity of silver and gold and precious stones, and a strong and beautiful horse, and as a present for the king, with which he came before the king. He bowed down to the earth before him. And the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Egypt wondered at the work of Rikayon, and they saw his riches and the presents that he had brought forth to the king. It greatly pleased the king, and he wondered. When Rikayon sat before him, the king asked him concerning all his works. Rikayon spoke all his words wisely before the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Egypt. And when the king heard the words of Rikayon and his wisdom, Rikayon found grace in the king's sight. He met with the grace and kindness from all the servants of the king, from all the inhabitants of Egypt, on account of his wisdom and his excellent speeches. And from that time on, they loved him exceedingly. Now the king answered and said to Rikayon, "Thy name shall no more be called Rikayon, but Pharaoh shall be thy name. Since thou didst exact a tax from the dead," he called his name Pharaoh. And the king and his subjects loved Rikayon for his wisdom. They consulted with him, all the inhabitants of Egypt, to make him prefect under the king. And all the inhabitants of Egypt and its wise men did so. It was made a law in Egypt. And they made Rikayon Pharaoh, prefect under Ahasuerus, king of Egypt. And Rikayon Pharaoh governed over Egypt, daily administering justice to the whole city. But Ahasuerus, the king, he would judge the people of the land one day in the year, when he went out to make his appearance. And Rikayon Pharaoh cunningly usurped the government of Egypt. He exacted tax from all the inhabitants of Egypt. And all the inhabitants of Egypt greatly loved Rikayon Pharaoh. And they made a decree to call every king that should reign over him in their seat of Egypt Pharaoh. Therefore, all the kings that reigned in Egypt forward, they reigned in Egypt from that time, they were all called Pharaoh unto this day. 15. And in that year there was a heavy famine throughout the land of Canaan. And the inhabitants of the land could not remain on account of the famine. It was very grievous. And Abram and all belonging to him rose and went down to Egypt on account of the famine. When they were at the brook of Mithraim, they remained there some time to rest from the fatigue of the road. Abram and Sarai were walking at the border of the brook Mitzrayim, and Abram beheld his wife Sarai. Oh, she was very, very beautiful. And Abram said to his wife, Sarai, since God's created thee with such beautiful countenance, I'm afraid of the Egyptians, lest they should slay me to take thee away. For the fear of God is not in these places. Surely, then thou shalt do this. Say thou art my sister to all that may ask thee, in order that it may be well with me, that we may live and not be put to death. Now, Abram commanded the same to all those who came with him, on account of the famine in Egypt. Also his nephew Lot he commanded, saying, if the Egyptians ask concerning Sarai, say she is the sister of Abram. And yet, with all these orders, Abram did not put confidence in them. But he took Sarai and placed her in a chest and concealed it amongst their vessels. Abram was greatly concerned about Sarai on account of the wickedness of the Egyptians. And Abram and all belonging to him rose up from the brook of Mitzrayim and came into Egypt, and scarcely entered the gates of the city when the guards stood up to him, saying, give tithe to the king from what you have. Oh, then you may come into the town. And Abram and those that were with him, they did so. Now, Abram, with the people that were with him, they came to Egypt, and when they came, they brought the chest in which Sarai was concealed, and the Egyptians saw the chest. And the king's servants approached Abram, saying, what hast thou here in this chest, the contents which we have not seen? Now open the chest, and give tithe to the king of all that it contains. Abram said, this chest I will not open, but you all demand upon it, I will give it. And this is Pharaoh's officers answered, saying, it is a chest of precious stones. Give us a tenth thereof. Abram said, all that you desire I will give, but this chest you must not open. The king's officers pressed Abram. They reached the chest, they opened it with force, and they saw, behold, a beautiful woman was in this chest. And when the officers of the king beheld Sarai, they were struck with admiration at her beauty. All the princes and servants of Pharaoh assembled to see Sarai, for she was very beautiful. And the king's officers ran. They told Pharaoh all they had seen, and they praised Sarai to the king. And Pharaoh ordered her to be brought. And the woman came before the king. Pharaoh beheld Sarai. Oh, she pleased him exceedingly. He was struck with her beauty. The king rejoiced greatly on her account, made presents to those who brought him with the tidings concerning her. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house. Abram grieved on account of his wife. He prayed to the Lord to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. Now, Sarai also prayed at that time and said, O Lord, thou did tell my lord Abram to go from his land and from his father's house to the land of Canaan, and thou didst promise to do well with him if he would perform thy commands. Now, behold, we've done that which thou didst command us, and we left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land, and to a people whom we've not known before, and we came to this land to avoid famine and all the evil accidents that have befallen me. Now therefore, O Lord God, deliver us and save us from the hand of this oppressor. Do well with me for the sake of thy mercy. The Lord hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and the Lord sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. The king came and sat before Sarai, and behold, an angel of the Lord was standing over them. He appeared to Sarai and said to her, do not fear. The Lord has heard thy prayer. The king approached Sarai and said to her, what is this man to thee who brought thee hither? And she said, he is my brother. And the king said, it is incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, to do unto him all the good which thou shalt command us. And at that time the king sent to Abram silver and gold, precious stones in abundance, together with the cattle, men, servants, and maidservants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the king's house. The king greatly exalted Abram on that night. And the king approached him to speak to Sarai, and he reached out his hand to touch her, and when the angel smote him heavily, he was terrified. He refrained from reaching her. And when the king came near to Sarai, the angel smote him to the ground and acted thus to him the whole night. The king was terrified. And the angel on that night smote heavily all the servants of the king, his whole household, on account of Sarai. There was a great lamentation that night amongst the people of Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh, seeing the evil that befell him, said, surely on account of this woman has this thing happened to me. He removed himself at some distance from her and spoke pleasing words to her. The king said to Sarai, Tell me, I pray thee, concerning the man with whom thou camest here. Sarai said, This man is my husband. And I said to thee that he was my brother, for I was afraid, lest thou should put him to death through wickedness. The king kept away from Sarai, and the plagues of the angel of the Lord ceased from him and his household. Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarai. Oh, the king was greatly astonished at this. And in the morning, the king called for Abram and said to him, What is that thou hast done to me? Why did thou say she is my sister? Owing to which I took her unto me for a wife. And this heavy plague is therefore come upon me and my household. Now, therefore, here is thy wife. Take her, go from our land, lest we all die on her account. And Pharaoh took more cattle, men servants, maidservants, and silver and gold to give to Abram. And he returned unto him Sarai his wife. The king took a maiden from whom he begat by his concubines, and he gave her to Sarai for a handmaid. And the king said to his daughter, It is better for thee, my daughter, to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be mistress in my house, after we have beheld the evil that befell upon us on account of this woman. And Abram rose, and he and all belonging to him went away from Egypt. Pharaoh ordered some of his men to accompany them, and all that went with him. And Abram returned to the land of Canaan, to the place where he had made the altar, where he at first had pitched his tent. And Lot, the son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a heavy stock of cattle, flocks and herds and tents, and for the Lord was bountiful to them on account of Abram. And when Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram, for their property was too great for them to remain together in the land. The land could not bear them on account of their cattle. And when Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flock, they would not go into the fields of the people of the land, but the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. And the people of the land saw this occurrence daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him on account of Lot's herdsmen. Abram said to Lot, What is this thou art doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that thou orderest thy herdsmen to feed thy cattle in the fields of other people? Dost thou not know that I am a stranger in this land, amongst the children of Canaan? Why wilt thou do this unto me? Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this. Lot wouldn't listen to Abram. He continued to do the same thing in the inhabitants of the land, and they came and told Abram. Now Abram said unto Lot, How long wilt thou be to me for a stumbling block with the inhabitants of this land? Now I beseech thee, let there be no more quarreling between us. We are kinsmen. But I pray thee, separate from me. Go, choose a place where thou mayest dwell with thy cattle and all the belongings of thee. But keep thyself at a distance from me, and then thy household. Be not afraid in going from me, for if anyone do an injury to thee, let me know. Oh, I'll avenge thy cause from him. Only remove from me. Now Abram had spoken all these words to Lot, and then Lot arose, lifted up his eyes toward the plains of Jordan. He saw that the whole of this place was well watered. It was good for a man, as well as affording pasture for his cattle. And Lot went away from Abram to that place, and he there pitched his tent, and he dwelt in Sodom, and they were separated from each other. And Abram dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and he pitched his tent there. And Abram remained in that place many years. 16. At that time, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, he sent to all the neighboring kings, to Nimrod, king of Shinar, who was then under his power, and to Tidal, king of Goyim, and to Arioch, king of Elasar, with whom he made a covenant, saying, Come up to me and assist me, that we may smite all the towns of Sodom and its inhabitants, for they have rebelled against me these 13 years. And these 4 kings went up with all their camps, about 800,000 men, and they went as they were, smote every man they found in their road. The 5 kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemaber, king of Zeboim, Berah, king of Sodom, Bershah, king of Gomorrah, Bela, king of Zoar, they went out to meet them. They all joined together in the valley of Siddim. And these 9 kings made war in the valley of Siddim. And the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah were smitten before the king of Elam. And the valley of Siddim was full of lime pits. And the kings of Elam pursued the kings of Sodom, and the kings of Sodom with their camps fled and fell into the lime pits. All that remained went to the mountain for safety. Now the 5 kings of Elam came after them and pursued them to the gates of Sodom. And they took all that there was in Sodom. They plundered all the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. They also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, and his property. They seized all the goods of the cities of Sodom. They went away to Unique. Abram's servant, who was in the battle, saw this. He told Abram all the kings had done to the cities of Sodom, and that Lot was taken captive by them. Abram heard this. He rose up with about 318 men that were with him, that night he pursued these kings, and he smote them. They all fell before Abram and his men. There was none remaining but the 4 kings who fled, and they went each his own road. Abram recovered all the property of Sodom. He also recovered Lot and his property, his wives and the little ones, and all belonging to him. Lot lacked nothing. And when he returned from smiting these kings, he and his men passed the valley of Siddim, where the kings had made war together. And Bera, king of Sodom, and the rest of his men that were with him, they went out from the lime pits into which they had fallen, to meet Abram and his men. And Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, the same was Shem, went out with his men to meet Abram and his people. With bread and wine, they remained together in the valley of Melech. And the Adonizedek blessed Abram. And Abram gave him 1/10 of all that he had brought from the spoil of his enemies, for Adonizedek was a priest before God. Now all the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah who were there with their servants, they approached Abram. They begged of him to return to them their servants with whom he had made captive, and to take unto himself all the property. Abram answered the kings of Sodom, saying, As the Lord liveth, who created heaven and earth, and who redeemed my soul from all affliction, who delivered me to this day from my enemies, he gave them into my hand. I will not take anything belonging to you, that you may not boast tomorrow, saying, Abram became rich from our property that he saved. For the Lord my God, in whom I trust, said unto me, Thou shalt lack nothing, for I will bless thee and all the works of thy hands. And now therefore, behold, here is all belonging to you. Take it, go. As the Lord liveth, I will not take from you from a living soul down to a shoe tie or a thread, excepting the expense of the food for those who went out with me into battle, and also the portions of the men who went with me, Anar, Ashkal, and Mamre, they and their men, as well as those also who would remain to watch the baggage. They shall take their portion of the spoil. And the kings of Sodom gave Abram according to all that he had said. They pressed him to take of whatever he chose. He would not. And he sent away the kings of Sodom and the remainder of their men, and he gave them orders about Lot, and they went to their respective places. Now Lot, his brother's son, he also sent away with his property. And he went with them, and Lot returned to his home, to Sodom. And Abram and his people returned to their home, to the plains of Mamre, which is in Hebron. At the time, the Lord again appeared to Abram in Hebron, and he said unto him, Do not fear. Thy reward is very great before me, for I will not leave thee until I shall have multiplied thee, and blessed thee, and made thee thy seed like the stars in heaven, which cannot be measured nor numbered. I will give unto thee thy seed all these lands that thou seest with thine eyes. To them will I give for an inheritance forever. Not only be strong and do not fear, walk before me and be perfect. And in the 78th year of the life of Abram, in that year died Ur, the son of Peleg, and all the days of Ur were 239 years, and he died. And Sarai, the daughter of Haran, Abram's wife, she was still barren in those days. She did not bear to Abram either a son or a daughter. And when she saw that she bare no children, she took her handmaid Hagar, whom Pharaoh had given to her. And she gave her to Abraham, her husband, for a wife. For Hagar had learned all the ways of Sarai, as Sarai had taught her. She was not in any way deficient in following her good ways. And Sarai said to Abram, Behold, here is my handmaiden Hagar. Go to her, that she may bring forth upon my knees, and that may I also obtain children through her. And at the end of 10 days of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 85th year of Abram's life, Sarai gave Hagar unto him. And Abram hearkened to the voice of his wife Sarai. And he took his handmaiden Hagar, and Abram came to her. She conceived. Now, when Hagar saw that she had conceived, she rejoiced greatly, and her mistress was despised in her eyes. She said within herself, "This can only be that I am better before God than Sarai, my mistress. For all the days that my mistress has been with my Lord, she did not conceive, but me the Lord has caused in so short a time conceived by him." And when Sarai saw that Hagar had conceived by Abram, Sarai was jealous of her handmaid. And Sarai said within herself, "This is surely nothing else but that she must be better than I am." Sarai said unto Abram, "My wrong upon thee for the time when thou didst pray before the Lord for the children, and why didst thou not pray on my account, that the Lord should give me the seed from thee? And when I speak to Hagar in thy presence, she despiseth my words, because she's conceived, and thou wilt say nothing to her. May the Lord judge between me and thee, what thou hast done to me." When Abram said to Sarai, "Oh, behold, the handmaiden is in thy hand. Do unto her as it may seem thy good in thy eyes." Then Sarai afflicted her, and Hagar fled from her into the wilderness. And an angel of the Lord found her in the place where she had fled by a well, and said to her, "Do not fear, I will multiply thy seed, for thou shalt bear a son, and thou shalt call his name Ishmael. Now then, return to Sarai thy mistress, and submit thyself unto her hands." Hagar called the place of that well Ber-lahai-roi, as it is between Kadesh and the wilderness of Bered. And Hagar at that time returned to her master's house. And at the end of days, Hagar bare a son to Abram, and Abram called his name Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when he begat him. 17. And in those days, in the 91st year of the life of Abram, the children of Chittim made war with the children of Tubal. For when the Lord had scattered the sons of men upon the face of the earth, the children of Chittim went and embodied themselves in the plain of Canopia. They built themselves cities where they dwelt by the river Tebru. And the children of Tubal dwelt in Tuscana, and their boundaries reached the river of Tebru. And the children of Tubal built a city in Tuscanan, and they called it the name of Sabinah, after the name of Sabinah, son of Tubal, their father. And they dwelt there unto this day. And it was at the time the children of Chittim made war with the children of Tubal, and the children of Tubal were smitten before the children of Chittim. And the children of Chittim caused 370 men to fall from the children of Tubal. And at that time the children of Tubal swore to the children of Chittim, saying, "You shall not intermarry amongst us. No man shall give his daughter to any of the sons of Chittim." For all the daughters of Tubal were in those days fair, for no women were then found in the whole earth so fair as the daughters of Tubal. And all who delighted in the beauty of women went to the daughters of Tubal. They took wives from them, and sons of men, kings and princes who were greatly delighted in the beauty of women. They took wives in those days from the daughters of Tubal. And at the end of 3 years, after the children of Tubal had sworn to the children of Chittim not to give them their daughters for wives, about 20 men of the children of Chittim, they went to take some daughters of Tubal. They found none. For the children of Tubal kept their oaths not to intermarry with them, and they would not break their oaths. And in the days of the harvest, the children of Tubal went into their fields to get in their harvest. And when the young men of Chittim assembled and went to the city of Sabinah, and each man took a young woman from the daughters of Tubal, and they came to their cities. And the children of Tubal heard of it, and they went to make war with them. They could not prevail over him, for the mountain was exceedingly high from them. And when they saw they could not prevail over them, they returned to their land. And at the revolution of the year, the children of Tubal went and hired about 10,000 men from those cities that were near them, and they went to war with the children of Chittim. And the children of Tubal went to war with the children of Chittim to destroy their land and to distress them. And in this engagement, the children of Tubal prevailed over the children of Chittim. And the children of Chittim, seeing that they were greatly distressed, lifted up the children which they had had by the daughters of Tubal upon the wall which they had built to be before the eyes of the children of Tubal. And the children of Chittim said to them, have you come to make war with your own sons and daughters? Have we not been considered your flesh and bones from that time until now? And when the children of Tubal heard this, they ceased to make war with the children of Chittim, and they went away. They returned to their cities, and the children of Chittim at that time assembled and built 2 cities by the sea. And they called one Pertu and one Arisah. And Abram the son of Terah was then 99 years old. At the time the Lord appeared to him and said to him, I will make my covenant between me and thee. Oh, I will greatly multiply thy seed in this covenant which I make between me and thee, that every male child shall be circumcised, thou and thy seed after thee. At 8 days old shall it be circumcised, and this covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And now, therefore, thy name shall no more be called Abram, but Abraham. Oh, there we are. And thy wife shall no more be called Sarai, but Sarah. For I will bless you both, and I will multiply your seed after you, that you shall become a great nation, and kings shall come forth from you. 18. And Abraham rose and did all that God had ordered him. He took the men of his household and those brought with his money. He circumcised them as the Lord had commanded him. And there was not one left with whom he did not circumcise. And Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised in the flesh of their foreskins. 13 years old was Ishmael when he circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And the 3rd day Abraham went out of his tent and sat at the door to enjoy the heat of the sun during the pain of his flesh. And the Lord appeared to him in the plain of Mamre and sent 3 of his ministering angels to him to visit. And he was sitting at the door of the tent. He lifted his eyes and saw, lo, 3 men were coming from a distance. He rose up, ran to meet them. He bowed down to them, and they brought him into the house. And he said to them, if now I have found favor in your sight, turn and eat a morsel of bread. He pressed them. They turned, and he gave them the water, and they washed their feet, and he placed them under a tree at the door of the tent. Abraham ran and took a calf, tender, good, and he hastened to kill it. He gave it to his servant Elazar to dress. And Abraham came to Sarai into the tent, and said to her, make ready quickly 3 measures of a fine meal. Knead it and make cakes to cover the pot containing the meat. Oh, she did so. Abraham hastened and brought before them butter and milk, beef, mutton, and gave it to them to eat before the flesh of the calf was sufficiently done. They did eat. And when they had done eating, one of them said to him, I will return to thee according to the time of life, and Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And the men afterward departed and went their ways to the places with which they were sent. And in those days all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and the whole of 5 cities were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. They provoked the Lord with their abominations. They strengthened and aging abominably and scornfully before the Lord. Their wickedness and their crimes were in those days great before the Lord. They had in their land a very extensive valley, about a half a day's walk. In it were the fountains of water and a great deal of herbage surrounding the water. And all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah went there 4 times in the year with their wives and children and all belonging to them. Oh, they rejoiced there with timbrels and dances, and in the time of rejoicing they would all arise when they lay hold of their neighbors' wives, and some the virgin daughters of their neighbors, and they enjoyed them, and each man saw his wife and daughter in the hands of his neighbor. No, they didn't say a word. They did so from morning to night, and they afterward returned home, each man to his house, and each woman to her tent. So they always did, 4 times a year. Also, when a stranger came into their cities and brought goods with which he had purchased with a view to dispose of there, the people of the cities would assemble, the men, the women, the children, the young, the old, and go to the man, take his goods by force, giving a little to each man until there was an end to all the goods of the owner with which he had brought into the land. Now, if the owner of the goods quarreled with the men, saying, what is this work which you have done to me? When thou would approach to him one by one, they would each show him the little which he took and taunt him, saying, I only took that little which thou hast to give me. And when he heard this from them all, he would arise and go from them in sorrow and bitterness of his soul. And when they would all arise and go after him and drive him out of the city with a great noise and tumult. And there was a man from the country of Elam who was leisurely going on the road, seated upon his ass, which he carried a fine mantle of diverse colors. And the mantle was bound with cords upon the ass. And the man was on his journey, passing through the streets of Sodom when the sun set in the evening. He remained there in order to abide during the night. No one would let him into his house. And at that time there was in Sodom a wicked and mischievous man, one skillful to do evil. His name was Hadad. He lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the street of the city. And he came unto him and said, Whence thou comest, and whither dost thou go? And the man said unto him, I'm traveling from Hebron to Elam, and I belong. And as I passed the sun and set, no one would suffer me to enter his house. And although I had bread and water, and also straw and provender for my ass, and I'm short of nothing. And Hadad answered and said to him, All that thou shalt want shall be supplied by me. But in the street thou shalt not abide all night. Hadad brought him to his house. He took off the mantle from his ass with the cord and brought him into his house. He gave his ass straw and provender, whilst the traveler ate and drank in Hadad's house. He abode him there that night. And in the morning the traveler rose up early to continue his journey. And when Hadad had said to him, Oh, no, wait, comfort thy heart with a morsel of bread and then go. The man did so, and he remained with him. They both ate and drank together during the day. And when the man rose up to go, Hadad said to him, Oh, behold, now the day is declining. Thou hadst better remain all night, and thy heart may be comforted. He pressed him. So he tarried there all night. And on the second day he rose up early to go away. When Hadad pressed him, saying, Oh, no, comfort thy heart with a morsel of bread, and then go. He remained and ate with him also the second day. And then the man rose up to continue on his journey. Oh, Hadad said to him, Oh, no, behold, now the day is declining. Remain with me to comfort thy heart. In the morning, rise up early, go thy way. And the man would not remain, but rose, saddled his ass. And whilst he was saddling his ass, the wife of Hadad said to her husband, Behold, this man has remained with us for 2 days, eating and drinking, and he has given us nothing. And now shall go away from us without giving anything? Hadad said to her, Be silent. And the man saddled his ass to go, and he asked Hadad to give him the cord and mantle to tie it upon the ass. And Hadad said to him, What sayest thou? And he said to him, That thou, my lord, shalt give me the cord and the mantle made with the diverse colors, which thou didst conceal with thee in thy house to take care of it. And Hadad answered the man, saying, This is the interpretation of thy dream. The cord which thou didst see means that thy life will be lengthened out like a cord. And having seen the mantle colored with all sorts of colors, means that thou shalt have a vineyard, in which thou wilt plant trees of all fruits. Now the traveler answered, saying, Oh, not so, my lord, for I was awake when I gave thee the cord, and also a mantle woven with different colors, which thou did take off the ass and put by them for me. And Hadad answered and saying, Surely I told thee of the interpretation of thy dream. Oh, it's a good dream, and this is the interpretation thereof. Now the son of man give me 4 pieces of silver, which is my charge for interpreting dreams, and of thee I only require 3 pieces of silver. The man was provoked at the words of Hadad. He cried bitterly. He brought Hadad to Sarai, of the judge of Sodom. Now the man laid his cause before Sarai, the judge. When Hadad replied, saying, It is not so, but thus the matter stands, the judge said to the traveler, This man, Hadad, telleth the truth, for he is famed in the city for his accurate interpretation of dreams. The man cried at the word of the judge, and he said, Not so, my lord, for it was in the day that I gave him the cord and the mantle which was upon the ass, in order to put them thereby in his house. And they both disputed before the judge, the one saying, Thus the matter, and the other declaring otherwise. Hadad said to the man, Giveth me 4 pieces of silver that I charge for my interpretation of dreams. I will not make an allowance. Give me the expense of the 4 meals that thou did eat in my house. The man said to Adon, "Oh, truly, I will pay thee for what I ate in thy house. Only give me the cord of the mantle, which thou didst conceal in thy house." Hadad replied before the judge and said to the man, "Did I not tell thee the interpretation of thy dream? The cord means that thy days shall be prolonged like a cord, and the mantle that thou which will have a vineyard in which thou wilt plant all kinds of fruit and trees. This is the proper interpretation of thy dream. Now give me the 4 pieces of silver that I require, compensation, for I will make thee no allowance." The man cried to the words of Adad. He said, they both quarreled before the judge, and the judge gave them orders to his servants, who drove them rashly from the house. They went away quarreling from the judge. And when the people of Sodom heard them, and they gathered about them, they exclaimed against the stranger, and they drove him rashly from the city. The man continued his journey upon his ass with bitterness of soul, lamenting and weeping. And whilst he was going along, he wept at what had happened to him in the corrupt city of Sodom. 19. And the cities of Sodom had 4 judges to 4 cities, and they were the names of Sarak to the city of Sodom, Shakad in Gomorrah, Zabnak in Admah, and Manon in Zobim. And Eliezer, Abraham's servant, applied to them different names, and he converted Sarak to Shakra, Sharkad to Shakra, Zebnak to Gezabim, and Manon to Matzlaim. And by desire of the 4 judges of the people of Sodom and Gomorrah had beds erected in the streets of the cities. And if a man came to these places, they laid hold of him and brought him to one of their beds, and by force made him to lie in them. And as he lay down, 3 men would stand at his head and 3 at his feet, and measure him by the length of the bed. And if the man was less than the bed, these 6 men would stretch him at each end. And when he cried out to them, they would not answer him. And if he was longer than the bed, they would draw together 2 sides of the bed at each end, until the man had reached the gates of death. And if he continued to cry out to them, they would answer him, saying, "Thus shall it be done to a man, that he cometh into our land." And when men had heard of all these things that the people of the cities of Sodom did, they refrained from coming there. And when a poor man came to their land, they would give him silver and gold, and cause a proclamation of the whole city not to give him a morsel of bread to eat. And if the stranger should remain there some days and die from hunger, not having been able to obtain a morsel of bread, then at his death all the people of the city would come and take the silver and gold which they had given to him. And that those that could recognize the silver or the gold which they had given to him, they took it back. And at his death they also stripped him of his garments, that they would fight about them. And he that prevailed over his neighbor took them. And they would, after that, carry him and bury him under some of the shrubs in the desert. So they did all the days to any that came to them, and they died in their land. And of course, the time of Sarah sent to Eliezer to Sodom to see Lot and inquire after his welfare. And Eliezer went to Sodom, and he met a man of Sodom fighting with a stranger. The man of Sodom stripped the poor man of all his clothes and went away. And this poor man cried to Eliezer and supplicated his favor on account of what the man of Sodom had done to him. And he said to him, "Why dost thou act thus to the poor man who came to thy land?" The man of Sodom answered Eliezer and said, "Is this man thy brother? Have thy people of Sodom made thee a judge to this day, that thou speakest about this man?" Eliezer strove with the man of Sodom on account of the poor man, and when Eliezer approached him to recover the poor man's clothes from the man of Sodom, he hastened and with a stone smote Eliezer in the forehead. The blood flowed copious from Eliezer's forehead, and when the man saw this blood, he caught hold of Eliezer, saying, "Give me my hire for having rid thee of this bad blood that was in thy forehead. For such is the custom and the law in our land." Eliezer said to him, "Thou hast wounded, and me requires me to pay thee for thy hire?" And Eliezer would not hearken to the words of the man of Sodom. The man laid hold of Eliezer and brought him to Shakra, the judge of Sodom, for judgment. The man spoke to the judge, saying, "I beseech thee, my lord, thus has this man done, for I smote him with a stone, that the blood flowed from his forehead. he's unwilling to give me my hire. The judge said to Eliezer, this man speaketh truth, did he? Give him his hire. Oh, this is the custom in our land. Eliezer heard the words of the judge, lifted up a stone, smote the judge. The stone struck on his forehead. The blood flowed copious from the forehead of the judge. Eliezer says, oh, if this then is the custom in your land, give thou unto this man what I should have given him. For his has been thy decision. Thou didst decree it. Eliezer left the man of Sodom with the judge. He went away. Now, when the kings of Elam had made war with the kings of Sodom, the kings of Elam captured all the property of Sodom. And when they took Lot captive with his property, when they told to Abraham, he went and made war with the kings of Elam, and he recovered from their hands all the property of Lot, as well as the property of Sodom. Now, at the time, the wife of Lot bare him a daughter, called her name Peltith, saying, because God had delivered him and his whole household from the kings of Elam, and Peltith, the daughter of Lot, grew up, and one of the men of Sodom took her for a wife. A poor man came into the city to seek maintenance. He remained in the city some days, and all the people of Sodom caused a proclamation of their custom not to give this man a morsel of bread to eat until he dropped dead upon the earth, and they did so. Now, Peltith, the daughter of Lot, saw this man lying in the streets, starved with hunger. No one would give him anything to keep him alive. And he was just upon the point of death. Oh, her soul was filled with pity on account of this man. Oh, she fed him secretly for many days with bread. And the soul of this man, it was revived. For when she went forth to fetch water, she would put the bread in the water pitcher. And when she came to the place where the poor man was, she took the bread from the pitcher and gave it to him to eat. Many days she did this. And all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah wondered how this man could bear starvation for so many days. They said unto each other, this can only be that he eats and drinks, for no man can bear starvation for so many days or live as this man has, without even his countenance changing. 3 men concealed themselves in a place where the poor man was stationed, to know of it who was it that brought him bread to eat. Peltith, daughter of Lot, went forth that day to fetch water. She put the bread into her pitcher of water. She went to draw water by the poor man's place. She took out the bread from the pitcher and gave it to the poor man. He ate it. The 3 men saw what Peltith did to the poor man, and they said to her, it is thou then who hast supported him, and therefore he has not starved, nor changed in appearance, nor died like the rest. The 3 men went out of that place in which they were concealed. They seized Peltith and the bread which was in the poor man's hand. They took Peltith and brought her before the judges. They said to them, thus did she do, and it is she who supplied the poor man with the bread. Therefore did he not die all this time. Now therefore declare to us punishment due this woman for having transgressed our law. And the people of Sodom and Gomorrah assembled. They kindled a fire in the street of the city. They took the woman. They cast her into the fire. She was burned to ashes. In the city of Admah was a woman to whom they did the like. For a traveler came into the city of Admah, abide there all night with the intention of going home in the morning. He sat opposite the door of the house of the young woman's father, to remain there as the sun had set. When he had reached that place, and the young woman saw him sitting by the door of the house, he asked her for a drink of water, and she said to him, who art thou? And he said to her, I was this day going on the road. I reached here when the sun set, so I'll abide here all night. In the morning I will arise early and continue on my way. The young woman went into the house, fetched the man bread and water to eat and drink. And this affair became known to the people of Admah. They assembled and brought the young woman before the judges, that they should judge her for this act. The judge said, the judgment of death must pass upon this woman. She transgressed our law, and this, therefore, is the decision concerning her. And the people of those cities assembled and brought out the young woman, and anointed her with honey from head to foot, as the judge had decreed. And they placed before her a swarm of bees, which were then in their hives. And the bees flew upon her and stung her, that her whole body was swelled. And the young woman cried out on this account of the bees, but no one took notice of her, or pitied her. Her cries ascended to heaven. The Lord was provoked at this. And all the works of the cities of Sodom, they had an abundance of food, and they had tranquility amongst them, and still they would not sustain the poor and the needy. In those days their evil doings and sin became great before the Lord. And the Lord sent 2 angels, and they had come to Abraham's house to destroy Sodom and its cities. And the angels rose up from the door of Abraham's tent, after they had eaten and drunk, and they reached Sodom in the evening, and Lot was then sitting in the gate of Sodom. And when he saw them, he arose to meet him, and they bowed down to the ground. And he pressed them greatly, and he brought them into his house, and he gave them victuals, which they ate, and they abode all night in his house. And then the angel said to Lot, Arise, go forth from this place, thou and all belongings to thee, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of this city. For the Lord will destroy this place. And the angels laid hold upon the hand of Lot, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his children, and all the belongings to him, and they brought him forth, and set him home without the cities. They said to Lot, Escape for thy life, and he fled, and all belongings to him. And the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah, and upon all these cities brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. He overthrew these cities, and all the plain, all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. And Ado, the wife of Lot, looked back to see the destruction of the cities, for her compassion was moved on account of her daughters who remained in Sodom. They did not go with her. And when she looked back, she became a pillar of salt, and is yet in that place unto this day. And the oxen which stood in the place daily licked up the salt to the extremities of their feet, and in the morning it would spring forth afresh. And they again licked it up unto this day. And Lot and 2 of his daughters that remained with him fled and escaped to the cave of Adullam, where they remained therefore for some time. And Abraham rose up early in the morning to see what had been done to the cities of Sodom. And he looked and beheld the smoke of the cities going up like the smoke of a furnace. And Lot and his 2 daughters remained in the cave, and they made their father drink of wine, and they lay with him. For they said there was no man upon earth that could raise up seed from them, for they thought that the whole earth was destroyed. And they both lay with their father, and they conceived and bare sons. And the firstborn they named the son of her son Moab, saying, From my father did I conceive him. He is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger also called her son Ben-Ammi. He is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. And after this, Lot and his 2 daughters went away from there. And he dwelt on the other side of the Jordan with his 2 daughters and their sons. And the sons of Lot grew up. And when they went and took themselves wives from the land of Canaan, and they begat children, and they were fruitful, and they multiplied.